Information shared on the following program is for general information purposes only. It does not constitute legal, tax, investment, or other advice, nor is it intended to recommend any particular investments, products, or financial instruments. Always seek advice from your financial advisor, attorney, or accountant with regard to investment, legal, or tax questions.
Worried that you'll make the wrong decisions when it comes to planning for your retirement? Well, never fear, because Tony Walker Financial is here.
Welcome to the only show in the country dedicated to helping savers worry less about money, the Worry-Free Retirement, with your host, retirement specialist and six-time author and fiduciary, Tony Walker.
Making a decision. Sounds easy enough. You think about what you want to happen, you lay out a few choices available to you, and then you quickly decide without any hesitation, doubt, or fear what the best choice for you will be. Nothing to it, right? Of course, we know that making decisions, especially all the tough decisions you'll be forced to make during this thing called retirement, is not easy at all. In fact, in my more than 40 years in the financial trenches and in meeting in person with more than 20,000 savers, I can tell you this: making tough financial decisions about what and how you're going to handle your money in retirement is difficult indeed. Decision-making experts tend to agree with my assessment of the difficulty with most people being able to make decisions, as evidenced by this article in Psychology Today. Their studies find that most people avoid making decisions for the following reasons. First, they simply worry about making a mistake, or they may have feelings of guilt, remiss, or being exposed, whatever that means. And last but not least, in our world anyway, many savers tell me who come in for a second opinion that they get very confused and sometimes don't even know what to ask of their advisor in the first place. The result of all this indecision and fear of making a wrong one, we call it paralysis by analysis. In other words, sometimes the overwhelmed saver becomes paralyzed with too much information and too many opinions from too many different sources. The result? That's right, sometimes they do nothing. So how do we at Tony Walker Financial help our clients overcome the fear of making a wrong decision when it comes to the many decisions they're going to need to make in retirement? Well, today we are going to cover many, and I mean many, of the financial decisions facing retirees that savers tend to fear making or put off making altogether. And to help us dive into some of the most common decisions that we classify as the tough ones for savers in retirement, with us in the studio to my left is fellow fiduciary Mr. Trey Juergens, and to his left, the other fellow fiduciary in the Louisville office, Mr. Wes Walker. Good morning, gentlemen.
Yeah, hello.
And we had some technical difficulties. We were going to try to have Heather on, but I've got a feeling by the time we cover all of the different decisions that a saver has to make, we're planning on this maybe being a couple of shows. So I think we got plenty to cover. Kind of before we get into it, though, I would like to just cover the definition of a decision. I don't know if people really think about that. What is a decision? The best definition I found was a position or opinion or judgment reached after consideration. Go to the next slide, Derek. We're just going to talk about all these. This was kind of cool, Trey. I saw this. I think you may have even passed this on. The 4 C's of decision making, but it's actually pretty good. Clarity. The next one is consideration, consultation, and then a big one with us and what we're going to be talking about today, why it's so difficult for people to commit to making a decision. Keep going, Derek. I love this slide here. Decision fatigue, which is kind of it is the topic of today's show. But here's what we're going to talk about today. Decision fatigue usually results in doing nothing. Now, to help us, go to this next article. I thought this was interesting. Again, Trey prepared a lot for the show. I don't remember if you sent this to me. I really agree with this. Have you seen this article, Wes?
I just took a look at it, right.
This is really interesting because, I don't want to stay on this article just a minute. Maybe this is part of the problem. Maybe that's it. We try to make all these decisions. We got to have all the information. And this article saying basically to make a good decision, a good business decision, maybe not the perfect decision, you only need about 75% of the information. What say you, Trey?
I think it says a lot. We've had a lot of inner workings just with our business and having to make decisions with the new CRM and new softwares and new technology we're trying to implement. And if we had to sit around and wait for every single answer, we would have never had anything done. So sometimes you just got to keep moving forward and learning as you go. And I think that does speak to it. If you had 75% of what is available out there, you can probably make a pretty educated decision.
And don't you feel a little bit for our clients, because you know me, I'm not really good with technology. I mean, man, we are putting on some really, really cool stuff. And I kind of feel like our clients, when they relate to finances, and sometimes as the guy that has to write the check, I have to put faith and trust in you all to figure out if this is really what we need, because it's kind of above my pay grade. What are your thoughts on this article, Wes?
Well, retirement planning, anytime you're, predicting, I hate to say predicting, but, you're working in the future. When you're thinking about things that are upcoming, you're always working with incomplete information. You're never going to get to 100% certainty with a decision. So if you can get to a, 75%, 3/4 level, I think you're doing pretty good.
Well, I like how you put that too, because retirement really is about the future. Now, you might say, well, I'm already retired, but the things we're doing, we work with people that, all the way to the cradle to grave kind of thing. We could be working with them 20 to 25 years. And you're right, there's no way we could actually predict everything that's going to happen. And speak to that, Trey, the game plan, now that both of you all been working quite a bit with all the clients that are coming in who've been clients, what in the world would we do with all the changes that go on in the future without that darn game plan?
Yeah, it really helps ground us and our clients in something that we can keep referring to. And it's really funny how those 4 C's kind of align with our process. Clarifying the vision, providing an assessment. We move these clients through this game plan, so when we meet 6 months from now, 6 years from now, we have something to look back on. And when we do these income plan audits and we reach out every so often, we're reaching out because we're trying to measure against what our original intentions were with what they told us they wanted to do.
A lot of times we'll illustrate too on a game plan that this person's going to retire now. And 2 years in the future, we'll look back at that plan. Well, I've still been working full time. I'm wondering if I can retire. We showed you retiring 2 years ago. I think you can easily do it. So it proved useful a lot of the time.
And I think that's a good point. I think the game plan sometimes, and we've had to kind of caution our clients, you don't have to call us every little change to update the game plan. The game plan is pretty big picture stuff. But that's true. A lot of times they're not really following the game plan, but to their good. They haven't drawn out as much money. Or a lot of times we're assuming only 2 or 3% returns. Lately, as of the date of this recording, we've had some nice returns. And we get to tell them, hey, you're ahead of schedule. So that the plan is the plan, but plans change. And to have that game plan to mold and shape the planning process really helps us and gives us confidence. I don't know about you all, but when people say, when are we going to meet? Well, a lot of times I just say when there's changes. You call us whenever there's a change. Now, we're monitoring everything on the back end, but we know that when they call out of the blue with a change, we can pull up the game plan and we're on the same page immediately. It really is pretty cool.
If your financial plan needs to be updated quarter to quarter, something is amiss there. There shouldn't be that many things to change that often.
Yeah, now I know, speak to that, Wes, because you handle a lot of the investments and everything. I mean, we monitor everything quarterly, but what are some of the things that happen in your world where people call in and have investment questions where you have to kind of pull up that game plan as well to look and see what's going on?
Definitely. A lot of the questions I'll answer about are things, when do I take money from these accounts? From which accounts do I take the money? Are there tax implications with those distributions? So the income plans do allow me to take a look just real quickly. Okay, here's the first place we thought you would take money out, whether it's an IRA with Charles Schwab, whether it's a non-qualified account. We can real quickly dissect this is the first place to take, money from, whereas in the future, we might just take it from an annuity contract with mailbox money for life.
Good stuff. And I kind of want to, let's just get to these. You had 12, Trey, you were going to ask some of the staff too about these. Did we get any response from the staff on a few more?
We did. I think we have quite a few shows to get to for all these decisions.
That'd be funny. It was like, 5 months later, part 48. But it has been fun because it does get kind of exhaustive of the different things that come up. So we've got 12 listed, but it sounds like we got a lot more than that since you've talked to the staff. All right, the first one you came up with, when and how to leave your employer's plan. As we record this show, what is this, October 21st or whatever it is, 2025, we've even had people not only retire, but we've had company closings, layoffs. There is a lot going on in the economy out there. So speak to this whole thing of, do you leave it there or do you take it out? And what are you supposed to do if that comes up?
Yeah, a lot of, and recency bias, given the fact that the market's been doing well here the last 18 months or so. A lot of people see this 401k and these double-digit returns, and should I keep hanging on? Should I keep doing it? And when you attain these ages of 59 and a half and 62 and nearing 65, and everyone's wanting to maybe take some winnings off the table, it probably is a good idea to come and meet someone. So when you have all this risk associated with this 401k, it's probably a good time to come and talk to somebody.
And Wes, sometimes, I turn them over to you. I know you're getting ready to say something. Speak to that.
Well, I just say, sometimes you'll hear that from prospective clients and people, well, the 401k is doing good. A lot of times you'll hear that phrase, it's doing good. What they don't realize is that there's what's called risk-adjusted returns. You are taking risk to make that return. Although it's doing good right now, you're not comparing that to the risk you're taking in order to make those returns. It could equally turn around and do just as bad. So if you're comfortable with your financial position and you think you might have a shot at retirement, I would consult somebody to see if now's the time.
And Trey, your next bullet point here is a good one. What is fatiguing about the 401k? We almost need Craig Davis in here, who does all of our rollovers, but fees, forms, taxes, penalties. Just today I had talked to a gentleman who was referred to us. He works at a company. He's 53. He said, I really think I can retire now, but I don't understand this rule of 55. Do I have to wait to 55? And of course, I was explaining how we could avoid the 10% tax penalty. But yeah, let's just address all of the fine print and all the boxes you got to check, sometimes just to get that darn thing moved over somewhere.
Yeah, the whole genesis of this theme was actually, I met with a couple, and they were the ones that kind of explained that they were just sick of making decisions. And I walked down the hall and I said, I've got an idea for a show. I said, decision fatigue. And this couple was just so over making decisions.
What age range? Do you remember what?
He was 62.
Okay.
He had an employer 401k. He was eligible for 2 pensions. There was paperwork for all 3 of them. He was trying to figure out if it made sense to go on Social Security. They had to figure out health insurance between 62 and 65. It just became all these different things. And the 401k was the big thing that he couldn't figure out what to do with, because we laid out a game plan. We explained that it would be rolled into IRAs, one annuity, one with Schwab. And again, it just generated more and more decisions. So their heads were spinning, but when we really slowed down and showed visually on the game plan what we were looking to do, how we were going to do all the paperwork, submit all the paperwork, keep tracking. All he had to do was be on a phone call. He loved it.
And Wes, this reminds me, we had Roy Ice put up some B-roll of him here, and he's a great guy. But in that interview we had with Roy Ice, that's basically what he was saying. He retired early, but he said, Tony, we don't know what we don't know. He's worked all of his life hard, saving money. He was a good saver, but all of a sudden I'm not trying to get tickled here, but we forget these people retire, and most of them have no clue with all of these kind of issues they're going to face.
Well, and you're not trained in the subject matter either. And why would you be? You spend all this time worrying about how Social Security gets elected or when to take IRA withdrawals, what RMDs are. Why would you go about accumulating all this knowledge? I think that's where we can come in, though.
And then finally, this happens quite a bit. I know, and we recently moved over her account. I had a nice young lady, had a little bit of money with us. She had been retired for years. She left her, I won't name the custodian, but retired for years, left it there. And she had a person in Texas through the 1-800 number, somehow a rep with this big company that stayed with her the whole time. Well, the rep finally told her, said, look, I'm retiring. And she finally decided, and I'm looking at here, delaying rolling over, leaving money stagnant, unreviewed for years. And that's what happened. She tried to leave it with a big custodian. This rep, who somehow she got hooked up with, retired, and she said, I cannot get anybody to service that account. So speak to that, and why some people, why they don't want to move it somewhere. Why do they just leave it at a 401k even though they've been retired for years possibly?
Well, I think what you said there, all these decisions usually leads to inaction. If you just kind of avoid it and don't think about it, a lot of our savers say that. They come in and they said, I've been putting money into that for years and years. I haven't really looked at it. I don't even know what's in there. And when they begin the exercise of pulling statements together and coming to see us, it's kind of this aha moment that it's been out there and not really thought about. And as you approach retirement, that's not a time to do that any longer. So the idea of leaving it at your previous employer or leaving it just kind of stagnant in an IRA at the bank or something, if no one is helping you understand, if these RMDs start sneaking up on you and you have no plan of how to use and enjoy that money, you're going to be kind of lost.
And let's speak to, I think some people have the impression that, okay, if we do move it over to you, Tony Walker Financial, we're going to get feed to death, and why would we even do that? What are the advantages of moving over a 401k that is just still sitting out there to someone like us who is an independent planning firm?
I've heard a few misconceptions about fees, about taxes. Some people think that if I move this from my employer-sponsored plan over to you, well, I'm going to have to owe some taxes. That's just a transfer. It's a rollover. It's not a taxable event. So that's kind of the first thing to clear up. As far as fees go, you might look at a 401k statement and you can dissect the fees that they're charging on it. A lot of times our fees, are relatively higher, but not by much compared to what these 401k custodians are charging. And again, they're not giving you any planning advice along the way. You're just kind of holding the assets with them. So I think it'd be useful, to get a review from a retirement planning specialist. And if the fees are a little higher, a lot of times you just have to, decide if that fee is justified. And in our case, we think it is.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Let's see, looking at the clock, got a few more minutes here. I want to cover this. So let's stay with the 401k theme in the essence of time here. How to invest once you leave the 401k. Wes, I want to go back to you because some people have, which is fine. They've made a lot of money in the market. They've been plowing money in. Through dollar cost averaging, markets are bouncing around and all of a sudden they magically appears at retirement age and there's a lot of money in there. But why should they consider maybe rethinking their positions of that much risk once they retire?
All depends once again on the financial personality of this person. If they're an investor or speculator, they might be fine, having all that money on the market, trying to generate high returns and then take a percentage of it out of the portfolio each year. If they're a saver, the client that we work with, then they're not going to be able to withstand that kind of volatility in retirement. If you're mostly in the stock market, if you're mostly in equities, you could see drawdowns of 30, 40, 50. 1929, we saw a drawdown of 90%. So, if you don't think you can hang in there through that sort of turbulence, then I really would reconsider just leaving it all in stocks.
And the biggest misconception out there, some of our friendly competitors, I wish they'd quit trying to speak for us. All they do over there is those annuities. Speak to the fact, yeah, we do a lot of annuities. We're approaching 5,000 annuities we've written as we record this show. How many accounts do we have with Schwab and how much money under management? And we are willing, Trey, aren't we? If somebody wants to put some money at risk, we can certainly do that for them.
Yeah, with nearly 3,000 accounts at Schwab and $360 million under management, we're not just the annuity king, as some people like to call you. When we show these plans, and there's upwards of 5, 6 different accounts that we're laying out for these savers, there may be some annuities. There's probably Schwab accounts, and we're going to show you how to use each of those. I just had a delivery appointment yesterday that it's kind of the culminating appointment. We present the final plan and annuity contracts and have every account laid out and kind of buttoned up. And he actually just called back today, had some more questions, and we discussed again how we plan to use each and every one of these. And he goes, "You explained all that yesterday." And I looked at it again and he said, "It just made too much sense." And he said,
like, this is too simple. Yeah.
And we had 5 accounts. We had 2 Schwab accounts. One was a little bit more risky. One was EYL, which is a more stable, and he was going to use that for distributions in the meantime, allow the one Schwab to go. We had a 5-year annuity to dump back in. And he said, it really just made sense. And he said, if I would have just kept that in the 401k, I would have been lost.
Well, the planning practice you would use with a 401k, you might withdraw a certain percentage per year. The strategy that Trey's talking about is often referred to as a bucketing strategy. So you've got one bucket for liquidity here, and just talking the Schwab, you've got another bucket for growth. We've set aside this bucket here to take money from in the near term, and then we've got the other bucket set aside to try and grow, as much as we can. I think with that strategy, to kind of put that, 2 lanes into people's head, to know that we've got an account we can pull from at any time. We're okay with some risk, but we're going to do it over here, maybe in an account like a Roth where there's not going to be any taxes in the future. There's a lot more planning that can go into it.
And I think, gentlemen, the thing we need to mention too is we do all of this in-house. We do the trading, we do all the allocations, we set up the buckets, we monitor the buckets. I don't know of any firm, or not many firms, that probably do everything, and that's for that one fee. So folks, if that's you right now, if you're sitting there thinking, yeah, I don't really have an advisor that can do all of this for me at one time, why don't you give us an opportunity to talk? This is Tony Walker Financial. We are a full-service retirement firm located in Kentucky. You can go to our website right now if you'd like to talk to me, the owner of the company. Just log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. That's TonyWalkerFinancial.com. Or you can call us anytime to set up a free phone call at 877-499-9255. Stay tuned, folks. The Bible segment is coming right up.
This Tony Walker Financial 5-star review comes to us from Robert Anderson. Tony Walker Financial has definitely made my retirement worry-free. Before I chose Tony Walker Financial, I was always wondering if I was doing the right thing with my investments. My previous retirement planner was 100% stock-based, and I had concerns about whether or not I would have enough resources to travel and to live the lifestyle I wanted. After meeting with Tony and his staff and receiving my game plan, I never even thought about money. My wife and I are now living our dream of traveling the country in our RV and visiting the national parks. We've visited 35 parks in the past 15 months and are still going strong. The people at Tony Walker Financial are absolutely fantastic to work with. I trust them 100% with my retirement future and have recommended them numerous times to my friends and colleagues. If you'd like to read more of our 5-star reviews, simply log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com.
Have you recently retired, been laid off, or offered a buyout? Has the company you work for moved, been acquired, or closed its doors forever? And finally, do you have a 401k with a previous employer you'd like to move to safer territory? Then take advantage of this opportunity to move your 401k or lump sum pension to Tony Walker Financial. Let's meet in person to discuss your retirement options. Log on now to TonyWalkerFinancial.com to schedule your free, no obligation appointment. Let us help you today. Having worked in the retirement planning field for 40 years, I know it's not just about how much money you've saved for retirement, but making sure you one day don't run out of money. That's where mailbox money comes in.
Mailbox money!
A reliable, lifelong income, much like the pension plans from the past. If you're interested in turning your 401k into mailbox money, let's talk. Just set up your free 10-minute phone call with myself at TonyWalkerFinancial.com. That's TonyWalkerFinancial.com. On today's show, we uncovered many of the decisions forced upon savers during this period of their lives we refer to as retirement. And as we have demonstrated, much of the decision-making process comes down to trust and whom you're going to trust with your life savings. And while this is the most important financial decision you'll ever make, this decision pales in comparison to who you will decide to trust with your very souls during this lifetime here on earth and after you and I are dead and gone. The book of Revelation reveals this importance of us hoping to be present with God both now and in the eternity, where in Revelation 22:17, it simply instructs us to make a simple decision, and here it is. Whoever wishes, take the free gift of the water of life. That's it. If you and I so choose, the Bible reminds us of this simple truth. If we wish to have life and to have it abundantly, all we have to do is ask. And yet, while this powerful reminder of God's free grace and mercy is placed at the very end of the Bible, its stated objective of God's will for mankind runs throughout it. The problem is that we mortal creatures tend to make God's free gift of life way too complicated and thus tend to think that such a simple explanation of who this God is and what He wants for us is, well, too simple, and that there must be more than simply taking of what He is offering us. This mandate of accepting the free living waters of God is evident where Paul says in 1 Corinthians 10:27, take whatever is offered by the host. In other words, if you are invited to a party and all of the expenses, the food, the drinks, the rent for the venue, are all paid for by the host, then it stands to reason that you and I are supposed to eat whatever they give us. Why? Because as the old saying goes, beggars can't be choosy. Of this seemingly simple and easy decision to freely eat and drink what God has offered to us, Charles Spurgeon points this out. It is surprising that many are too high-minded to stop what they are doing and take God up on His offer. Of this interesting decision to bypass the free gift of God for what the world offers, Charles Spurgeon says this: it would demean them, they think, to drink a common drinking fountain, so they ride by with parched lips. Interesting, Jesus' final words to Peter found in John 21:17 conclude with this mandate, simply this: feed my sheep. That's it. Feed those who you know need the food and water that only He can offer. Feed them with what, Tony, you ask? Well, we just talked about it. Feed them with the bread of life, which is the Word of God. In other words, as we think about all the lost souls out there, including sometimes us, the hurting souls, the souls that have no direction for their lives, or worse yet, those souls who fear what will happen to them after they take their last breath. Here is God's spoken word and the Son of Man reminding us that all we have to do is get off our high horse and accept the free gift of His living water, to feed on what He has left us, His Word, and of course His Holy Spirit. So why? Why, with such an open invitation to sinners like you and me, would we be so stubborn as to ride by with parched lips and not wish to drink from this free fountain of life and instead walk our merry way? Well, I'll tell you why. It's called pride, and it's the worst sin of all. In fact, Proverbs 8:13 says God hates pride as much as He hates evil behavior. So what does pride look like? Well, it looks like us showing up at the host party and insulting the host by not partaking of the free goodies they are offering us because we're too proud to do so. And thus, here we are insulting God by not accepting the free gift of life. How evil can we get? I mean, you got a better idea on how this thing's going to end up? I sure don't. But Tony, you say, I need more information before I make a decision to accept this simple offer from God. I need to understand, more about this man Christ and whether He truly came to pay my way freely into this party. To which I would suggest to not approach such a truth from God's Word from your own understanding, but rather approach Him as if you are truly thirsty. Admit that your soul is hungry for more than the world has to offer, and I assure you, when you decide to accept by faith the Lord of hosts and the living water He promises to provide, then all the worries and pursuits that the world has to offer will begin to quickly fade away. And that, my friend, is some good news you and I can take to the bank. Amen? Well, speaking of making some choices out there, I bet you're thinking right now, let's get back to that retirement thing, Tony, and who am I going to trust with my money? Well, if that's you, if you are retiring soon, maybe you're one of those folks that recently was just laid off or experienced a company closing, or maybe you're that person that's sitting out there and you have no advisor whatsoever, we need to talk. And here's all the decision you got to make. It's absolutely free. It's only going to take about 10 minutes of your time because we call this the free 10-minute fiduciary phone call. And here's how easy it is to talk to me, Tony Walker, the owner of the company, about you. Simply log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. You're going to click on that little Let's Get Started button. And when you do, we're going to arrange this free phone call. Now, after we talk, if it looks like I can be of service, we're going to meet in person. That's right, you and I, the owner of the company, in person to lay out that free proprietary written game plan that only Tony Walker Financial offers. Internet not your thing? Just want to give us a call? No problem. We got operators standing by 24/7. That number is 877-499-9255. Well, we've enjoyed being with you today on the Worry-Free Retirement. You remember next week, between now and then, if all else fails, you be worry-free and you make it a good one.